Hello and welcome back, and that's right, today we want to return to the subject of the Zettlab D6, more precisely the Zettlab AI NAS, a NAS that appeared a little over a month ago over on Kickstarter. We've talked about this device a few times here on the channel, and this video is about should you back this as the campaign's got less than a week left, or even if you are backing it, is now the time to walk away. That's what this video is about, because we've talked about this device in a myriad of ways. We saw it last year, IFA 2024 in Berlin. We got 2 prototype devices over time, and we've done a bunch of tests on it. And now, with the campaign drawing to a close, and the campaign raising now over $1 million, I think it is, just before it closes, a good time to talk about whether you should stay on this, or if you haven't backed it already, whether you should jump on it, or it's now the time to bounce. Real quick, as I've said in other videos as well, keep in mind this is a product on crowdfunding. This is not traditional retail, and although the brand has detailed in several different comments that this is going to be going to traditional retail before the end of the year, and that is the non-Ultra and Ultra series devices, if you're going to back this, remember this isn't traditional retail. If you're going to back this, I strongly recommend that you use a credit card that has a good cashback protocol in case. So make sure you've got that, because we've seen good, but we've also seen bad crowdfunding projects for NAS. Keep that in mind. Now, later in the video, I will go through the software, some of the updates that have happened in the software since the previous prototype video, but I'll say straight away what I wanted to talk about is a lot more of the community stuff in the meantime. The updates we've received, communication with backers, other people online that have reviewed this device. So if you've only come to this video to see the software updates, use the chapters at the bottom of the screen to skip ahead. But for now, let's talk about the last month or so. Now, originally, I was one of the few people that actually demoed and reviewed this prototype. Of course, that has changed. Numerous different platforms have reviewed this in that time. Probably one of the most prominent, what I'm going to recommend for you guys, is Two Guys Tech, friends of the channel. We've talked about them before with another popular crowdfunded NAS device that we talked about last year, and they had hands on this as well and did their own test. They had a prototype as well. I believe it was the D6 too, but it has appeared and been reviewed on other websites there, largely pretty positively. Indeed, as mentioned, they have crossed that $1 million backing there, and that has come from 1,400 backers overall, currently, again, with a few days left on the clock. But I will say right now it is worth highlighting a few extra things that happened during that time. Number one, if you want to be like overtly positive, you could talk about one. They did a big giveaway where a few users got free units. Also during that time, the brand has published 13 different videos on their YouTube channel that sort of go through a lot of the features and services and what it can do, and demonstrations of what it can do, alongside a production facility video of some of the early devices going into production there. Also, as they crossed that 1 million line backer goal, they ended up offering all users that went for the Ultra Series version double RAM, so that's going up to 32 gig for all of those users. And anyone that backed the D4 and D6, that is the ROC chip, the RK, the ARM-based processor version, getting a 512 gig SSD included. So, again, these are all positive things. But we have to keep in mind this is still a product that no one in the consumer sense has got their hands on yet. So these are all promises upon promises upon promises. So do keep that in mind. And alongside that backer goal update, I will say I've detailed a little bit more about the warranty there, the 3-year warranty that's going to be made available. I will say, one, scrolling through the comments that have appeared on there, I struggled to find any question that Zettlab didn't answer. If you scroll through it, again, there's not a huge amount. There's only about 115 there, which given his 1,400 backers and 1 million raised, that's actually fewer comments than I expected. But nonetheless, I couldn't find a question that they didn't address in one form or another, even repeated questions with unique answers. Secondly, I will say their FAQ is one of the longest I've ever seen, and they've added to it over that time. So again, in terms of just being completely objective about how a NAS brand handles a crowdfunding campaign, I will say in terms of communication, this is one of the best I've ever seen. Again, promises on promises upon promises, but nonetheless, it's a very well-run campaign so far. There's even multiple instances of the question that a lot of users had that I didn't get a solid answer for back in September, and that was, does this device support third-party operating systems, or will the warranty support it? And they've answered it in numerous cases. One of the things I detailed in one of my videos was if you go for the non-Ultra series, that's running on a RK ROC chip, and that chip is an ARM. So third-party operating systems is going to be tough, and they detailed that they're trying to explore that. But when it comes to the Ultra Series version, it will support third-party operating systems there. And they soft confirmed that it would be covered by that 3-year warranty there. Again, if I find evidence to the contrary or evidence that actually solidifies that, I'll pop it on screen now. But it seems like third-party operating systems are going to be supported there on that device. But again, I didn't find a solid 100% answer. One thing I did notice that kind of surprised me, when I mentioned a bunch of other reviews have started cropping up about this prototype device over time, all of them are looking at the D6 model from what I can see. All of us are, looking at the ARM-based model, the RK series one, and not the Ultra series. Now, the brand has seemingly been very clear in all the crowdfunding comments and stuff that the Ultra series is coming out later. It's going to take longer in development, and it looks like that is going to be arriving in October of 2025 with the D4 and D6 non-Ultra versions slated for July 2025. Now, I've not seen anything on at least the reported comments and updates that would indicate that that is going to be delayed, but when we get to the software section later on, I do have my questions about that. But right now, given that the D4 and D6 at $399 and $499 early backing priced respectively, and the Ultra series at $999 and $1099 for the D6 and D8 Ultra series respectively, I was really surprised just how many people were backing the Ultra. Don't get me wrong, it is powerful as heck, but there is something like 800 people out of those 1,400 that are backing the Ultra series, even though no one, including myself, have seen the Ultra series running there. Now, I'm not saying that should be a problem. I'm not saying you should run for the hills whatsoever, because I would argue there's a lot of users looking at the build of that Ultra series, 210 GBE, USB 4, PCIe upgrade, an insanely powerful Ultra Core processor with, I think, 36 tera operations per second for AI, and maybe looking at third-party operating systems that think, do you know what, $999 and $1099 for a pre-built 8-base solution or 6-base solution is reasonable enough to take a punt at this. I get it. But it still really surprised me just how many people were backing the Ultra version when the majority of us have only really been demoing and looking at the non-Ultra one. And just keep that point I mentioned earlier on in mind, that the Ultra series model is going to arrive much later in the year. Another quick update, just since the original recording of this video, I just wanted to add this in before we publish, and that is that the brand has released a lot more information about that Ultra series model in the last few days, alongside not only a little bit more detail about the Ultra class model hardware and it running, but also some of the local AI testing with all of the AI being deployed locally on that Ultra series model without the client application. Now, alongside this, there has also been updates with regards to certification for power and different regional distribution. They've also updated some of the design philosophy, something we talked about in the previous video about how it looked just a little bit dated there in some of the buttons. Then there was the overall chassis redesign for the newer generation product, and more videos with regards to the construction of the device across multiple different fields. So there have been numerous updates taking place since I originally recorded this video that I did think warranted adding before we went and published the video today. Now let's break down to what's happened on the software front during the last month or so of crowdfunding, because there has been several updates, but I'm going to tell you right now, it still doesn't feel finished. So right now, if we go into the settings there, let's go away. Do you know what? We won't go in the web browser. We'll ditch the web browser and stay in favor of that Windows client. Now the Windows client is currently up to version 0.6.1 right now, so it's still not at version 1.0, and that when you go into the NAS details itself using that client, you can see that we're running 0.6.0 alpha. So this is what I meant earlier on when I was talking about delivery of this product in July. I'm not saying the hardware isn't ready. I think the hardware is ready, and barring, as you can hear in the background, I think some tweaks that need to be done to the fan settings there. I think apart from that, On the hardware front, it's largely ready. It's the software that I do still think needs a little bit more time. And it's going to be a question of whether the system is going to be delivered and dispatch happening in July and then software updates down the line, or they'll distribute the device once the software hits 1.0. And that's something I think a lot of users in the comments are probably going to talk about with the brand, because although I do still think these systems can achieve what they're saying it can do, because it's not at version 1.0, that is what I mean about that delivery. Now, outside of the AI services, I will say some of the domestic appliances and applications that I'd expect in a NAS service have been added since the previous review. For example, taking advantage of some storage facilities like SSD caching and Hotspare management are now all rolled in with the latest update. Indeed, I've tried lots of different drive types, and SATA SSDs or hard drives in the larger scale, I've not encountered many problems. When I say many, I do mean things like hot swapping is still not supported on this device, which I know is going to be a killer for some users there, and that is hopefully something they're going to resolve later on. Now, I don't know if it's a power distribution into the SATA ports there on the back, or just the operating system needing seamless access, but not having hot swapping support there, I will say, really surprised me. Adding third-party SSL certificates, again, this is something that has been added there. I still haven't found any two-factor authentication. That is something I requested very early doors, and I know there are people that will throw their own opinion on Chinese NAS devices and how things like two-factor authentication tend to come in later. But I'll say right now, the fact that it's not included even in this pre-version 1.0, I wish it was in there. The same goes for things like iSCSI support. I haven't been rolled in. Some limitations, I'm prepared to give them a little benefit of the doubt, are going to be hamstrung, at least in this revision, by the fact that it is running on that RK processor there, rather than running on a much beefier Intel core, which really make things a great deal easier. And again, we are talking, as you can see there on screen, this is running on an ARM processor with Mali graphics, which really does limit a lot of the feature set of what you can do on these devices. Hence why we discussed in our review, if you do want to take advantage of some of those AI facilities, you are definitely going to need to use the client, because the internal system is not going to be able to take advantage of a lot of those. That's the differentiation between the Ultra and the non-Ultra series there. It does mean with the client that you are still utilizing the local client without internet access and running all the AI services using the NAS data, but it's not as clean a separation as you would have with taking advantage of the Ultra series, which they say will be able to do all of this without any client-side AI services. The range of AI models that this includes with that you can choose to run locally are pretty much the same as they were a month ago. There have been a couple of tweaks and changes. I've gone back through my original recording and seen that some of the file sizes have changed, presumably rolling in newer updates to these local deployed LLMs, but not too much has changed there. Equally, these models can be adjusted on the fly as well, so you're able to actually adjust quite a lot of the parameter utilization here. Again, this is quite advanced stuff for a lot of users that were just looking for a simplified local AI tool to be used with their local data, but still nonetheless, I like what we're seeing here, and I'm just hoping they stay on top of these AI LLMs with each granular Zettlab client update. The Cocard backup operation software has improved, I would argue, as well. It's a lot more user-friendly than what I saw a month ago. It's still, it does exactly the same thing. It's been presented now a great deal better for backing up between different targets there. So, for example, if you want to go ahead and add some of those cloud-based targets there are a few better options. On to the AI services, I will say, and I'm going to try my damnedest here to be fair, because we are still talking about an alpha, not even a beta, not a release candidate or a version 1.0. We're still talking about an alpha that's had a few revs since our original review a month ago. I will say the AI stuff on this is still good and bad news. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, if we open up, for example, the clip application here, much like in my previous review, you can go ahead and select individual files. And by the way, this has already been ripped. So, for example, let's look at Charlie Brooker. So if we look at Charlie Brooker stuff, I've got every episode of Screen Wipe on here. If you've never watched it, it's incredible. He didn't just do Black Mirror. And this allows us to go ahead and access all of that crawled text OCR writ dialogue that the AI has crawled in the meantime. And this is the local RK chip, by the way. This isn't the local client application that's done that. And that allows us to then use the AI services on the NAS to start utilizing that information. So I was looking at screen wipe script earlier on. Let's go ahead and go for screen wipe episodes. So this allows it to find those. Now again, that's a pretty basic search. I did other searches looking for movies with Tom Hanks and stuff like that, and the results were mixed. Now, some of this is because we are running on that RK chip that even now, when I look at the resource monitor on this system, is already working pretty hard. Now, if we go into the keywords there, because that's where it's analysed that information, it's found all those episodes of Screen Wipe using that information. And I did further testing while looking at, say, episodes of Christmas TV or TV shows that featured Easter, and it then used that semantic search to find them. Was it foolproof? No. For example, if we scroll through this list here, when it's gone through the semantic search, it started finding other things. These are things where perhaps the word screen or screen wipe, or it was defined in one way or another with text on screen showing those words. So again, we can say how much of that is useful semantic search, and then after that, if we choose to, we can then start using the variables to find it. But I think a lot of users aren't really looking to use semantic AI searches and then use manual filters. So we're kind of half success there. But when it comes to the resource utilization while we're doing this, it just seems a little high for me. The same goes from going back to my review when I was talking about how you can give the NAS instructions. So for example, create a new user is something we've talked about before, and then it will guide you through the process using the AI LLM to help you set it up together. But because I've run 2 or 3 AI services right now on this RK model, the CPU utilization is quite high, and I think right now they really are going to have to optimize, or at least be a little bit clearer about what the RK processor can do over the Ultra. That's probably one of the main reasons I think a lot of users who take this quite seriously have gone for that Ultra model. But I will say right now, say for example I put in a garbage instruction, so we're just going to hammer those keys there. I will say the range of instructions I can give the NAS to do to perform different NAS services is still relatively limited. And I was really hoping that a month on that we would see a lot more NAS control systems in place. They've added a few. There aren't that many different ones compared to what we saw a month ago when it comes to controlling the device with simple human commands. Now, using the local AI services here, so I'm going to put who is Rimmer from just who is Rimmer. There we go. Now, for those that aren't aware, Rimmer is a character from Red Dwarf. There's episodes of Red Dwarf on this NAS alongside a few ebooks that I dumped on earlier on. Now, I would like to give the client app and Zettlabs more credit than I'd like to about the AI services, but we are using a third-party model that they've allowed me to download and install on the client app there. It's still good that it can do it, and they have facilitated that and made it incredibly easy, allowing me to download those AI models very easily, as well allow me to control them in the level of hardware that it's going to utilize when it's accessing them. But still, nonetheless, I do still wish a lot of these were running in the system. I know there are hardware difficulties with that RK chip in order to get it done, but still nonetheless it means that right now as my local system is accessing the NAS, and the NAS is still working pretty darn hard from some very small number of AI services I ran earlier on that RK chip, that ARM there, it does lead to delays that I wish and hope are not going to be there in the final 1.0, or at least release candidate release. You can see the AI thinking just like we used to before. We're using remote access services, and it is only doing this with information stored on the NAS itself, but it should be snappier than this. It's able to do it, and I'm hoping they improve upon it. And again, we are still talking about crowdfunding and an in-development prototype product and not the final system. But at least 1 month on, I was hoping to see a few more, improvements on this from what we're seeing. It's better than I saw a month ago, but not as much better as I was hoping it to be. Staying on AI, there was something I didn't really go into enough detail on my previous review that I really wanted to touch a little deeper on, and that was using the file service here to find out more about those classifications. Now, As mentioned, if you want, you can go ahead and do searches there on some of the AI categories that were already pre-built into it. But you can also create your own categories on the fly. What do I mean by that? Well, it means if you choose to, you go into new categories there and you can genuinely pick anything. So let's go with it right now, and I'm going to say something really out there. I'm going to see muddy cake. I don't even know what muddy cake is, but it manages to find cake there that's looking muddy, looking mucky. These are parameters. Now you might be thinking, well, you use the word cake there, it's not fair. How about if I go for Greggs, which is a brand name of bakery products here in the UK, and it's managed to find baked goods. That's semantic search, remember, because none of these are cakes that came from Greggs, I'm going to add. These are what it's been able to find via word association there, which is not too shabby. And indeed, we've even got a Pret there on one of those pictures there as well. So there's that affiliation, that semantic search that we've talked about, and you can really go wild. We could say man eating on a roadside. And again, you can create your own filters, create your own groups. You're not limited by what it says you can or cannot do. It's not purely accurate, as you can see from some of these not being correct. But where it gets interesting is when we look at filters for words, look for filters for audio files and more. And this is where we can use that semantic search further to only look for file types. So we can say we want to search for something in audio files there. So if I look for the word river, and now we're finding the word river in audio, and I didn't really explore this enough during the review because I only really looked at photos, but it's true, you can break this down quite significantly to find. Obviously I can't play some of these, it won't really be for the best, but again we can really break it down into documents that we've uploaded onto this device. You can see here an absolute ton of ones on here, and the same goes all the way down to even zip files. So there's plenty to play with and use that integrated search to find out more. As mentioned, a lot of the other services on the device are actually pretty good. They've added pretty much a whole complement now of all the different file services that you can choose to use to access the data remotely on the system, NFS as well. As mentioned, the lack of iSCSI does kick me up the bum just the tiniest bit, but everything else seems to be, formally in place there. Different user group management there, secure access. They've refined the AI access to certain areas of the device with admin users. They've tightened up a lot of that stuff throughout all of the mini updates there. But again, this is still not the version 1.0 that some of you are waiting for. But at the same time, this is still a product in development, so maybe that 1.0 we're not going to see quite yet. What I'd like to hear more from the brand is more about how this system is going to be rolled out. I touched on this in the video I know earlier as well, but I want to know if this device is going to roll out with completed software or it's going to roll out with a pre-1.0 software revision, and hopefully we'll get an answer to that in the comments below. If you're looking for third-party applications, you've still got that container center that we've already touched on there that allows you to install all of that if you need it, so you're not heavily reliant on this software right now. And as we touched on, third-party operating systems are definitely possible on the Ultra Series device, but they're exploring it. They're saying Q1 2026 for this ARM-based version there, so I wouldn't hold out much hope, at least in the short term, for that third-party software running well. But you've still got containerization straight out of the gate if you need it. So overall, the software for and out the blue software, and certainly when we're looking at things like FINU or FNOS, which other Chinese brands right now who are making NAS devices that are getting that closed source Chinese NAS operating system modified for their own platforms, Zettlabs have clearly chosen to go another way and get their own OS on board from the ground up, a little bit like Casa OS and Zimmer OS for that matter as well, and I've got to applaud them for that. But let's summarize. But once again, we have to factor in this is still not a product that is finished. Now, maybe it's because the device I'm using is still a prototype unit that I've had now for the better part of 2 months. And there is a newer revision of this with a more integrated CPU utilization for all of these services. But nonetheless, as we go through some of the apps panel here, we can see applications and services are still yet to come, with dates like July, August, September, all the way down to November as well on some of them. So this is clearly a product that is still a ways to go, and another reason why we're still not seeing that 1.0 version update there. Now, you could play devil's advocate and say, you know, arguably fairly, that unlike a lot of brands that have used crowdfunding that have already got a finished product, they're just trying to use the marketing potential of crowdfunding to sell their product. These guys have gone a different way, and they're clearly a product here that is unfinished, and they're using crowdfunding to get the job done. Some might argue that is the entire point of crowdfunding there, but I think because the waters have been just so tremendously muddied by NAS brands utilising crowdfunding to sell their NAS devices when their products have been largely finished in the first place, as more as a conservative investment opportunity rather than an actual products needing development further of funding, this is actually quite a breath of fresh air in that regard. Again, playing devil's advocate, but just be aware that right now, as of June 2025, they still haven't rolled out that version 1.0 software, and if that's something you're not really happy with, that's something to keep in mind. But once again, I would argue, keep in mind you are looking at a product that was de facto on a crowdfunding site, and therefore is representative perhaps of an unfinished product. There are arguments on either side, but let's head back into the studio to conclude. So that brings us right away back to the original question. Should you back this? Should you back out of this? And I'll say right now, with a few days to go, I'm feeling quietly confident, you know, as much as I can about any other brand that I've spoken about here on the channel that's pursuing crowdfunding. You know, if we want to look negative first, number one, they have no proven public track record of NAS solutions like any other brands in the market. They're not a mini PC vendor that has turned into the world of NAS like a B-Link, like a GMK, like a Minis Forum. These are a brand that have started from the ground up on crowdfunding. And if you haven't backed this device using a credit card with cashback, or chargeback, I should say, I would maybe think about that just a little bit, because this is crowdfunding. Now, on the flip side of that, I've been to their HQ. I've had 2 different prototype units. I've met this brand several times, and I've met them at IFA in Berlin in 2024. That is not a cheap event to attend. And if they were to raise, let's say, it ended now, let's go worst case scenario and go, oh, it's a scam. Let's say they were a terrible company and they make $1 million out of this, okay? $1 million in the grand scheme of things is not a lot. Let's say there's 3 or 4 people. Let's go for the worst case scenario and this doesn't get delivered upon. That $1 million would have had to have covered attendance at IFA 2024, which by the way is not cheap. It would have had to cover all of the prototype units that have been sent to reviewers. It would have had to pay for all of the man hours in between, and me visiting their HQ and preparing the old HQ, which was populated by loads of these devices alongside other hardware and more. I'm not saying that none of these things could happen and it still not be a scam. What I'm saying is, for $1 million, it's not worth it. So with all of those things in mind, I get a vibe of legitimacy from them. I do think that the July 2025 launch and rollout and delivery on this is quite optimistic. I wouldn't be surprised if they missed that deadline by a matter of weeks or maybe a month. It would not surprise me at all. They've not said anything, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not going to deliver upon it, largely because I've seen plenty of campaigns deliver late. It's almost a running joke at this point with crowdfunding. And that Ultra Series device coming later, right now, I would like to see more testing of that all-in local AI system in the Ultra. But if you're thinking about backing this right now, based on all the information I have seen, I'm quietly confident about this one. But just make sure you are using a backing method where you've got the means to pull back the money if things go wrong. And I would say that about any crowdfunding campaign, by the way, not just these guys, but all of them. But this has been a final update, at least in terms of the Kickstarter on the Zettlab NAS series there. There's a link below if you do want to go ahead and back this project on Kickstarter. We do get an affiliate from that, just like we do from Amazon or any other affiliate service we use. So if you're comfortable with that, please use that link. But otherwise, ignore it, use Google, whatever you want to do. Bottom line, we don't care if you're going to use that link or not. We just want to see a good AI NAS roll out, this or whatever it is going to be. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.